guys in the dark.
I was walking down a residential area in Chicago's north side in the early spring of 2001. There was an older lady who was desperately trying to run up behind us in spiked heels while clutching a fur coat to her chest. She kept on yelling "David" while waving her clutched purse in the air. Neither of my friends or I are named David, so we didn't know who she was yelling at until we had spotted a shabbily dressed guy lopping slubbishly far up behind us. We figured he must have been David, but he seemed completely unaware of what was happening. Being good Samaritans and having just finished a rehearsal for a comedy show that we were doing, we all three at the same time had yelled "David" in the most obnoxiously loud voice possible. Up ahead, David Schwimmer had spun around with a look on his face that screamed two things. He desperately needed a pitcher of black coffee and to kick each one of our asses. We innocently pointed at the older lady, who was just catching up with us, whereupon he craned his neck and relaxed his raised veins. She thanked us as she scampered up past us. After a pause, my one friend had said, "So that was David Schwimmer?" Yes, it was," I answered him. After another pause, my other friend gravely whispered, "We could have taken him, you know." This story isn't mine, but it's too good to pass up. It's that of my now ex-partner, who was a flight attendant. It takes place in maybe 1994, when a certain celebrity wasn't quite so famous. My partner was working first class, had yet to reach the stage where he was tired of dealing with passengers and their issues. At one point, a woman boarded wearing a full-length fur coat. Attempting to be helpful, he offers to hang the coat up in the little closet up front. She refuses, clearly annoyed at the suggestion, insisting on placing it on the seat right next to her. My partner explains that it will be a full flight, and the seat likely will be full, and she'd be better off hanging it up. She glares at him and refuses once again. Soon after, the passenger next to the woman arrives, forcing her to move the fur coat. Again, my partner offers to hang it up for her. The woman, now very annoyed, says that's not acceptable. He points out that the only other option for her is if she kept it up on her lap for the flight, also not acceptable to her. He tells her he has a few things to do, but he'll be right back if she has any other issues. My partner starts to walk away when the fur coat lands around his head and shoulders. Surprised, he turns to the woman, who yells at him, "Just do something with the goddamn coat." This was a very bad move on her part. My partner, coat in hand, went over to the intercom, even though the flight attendants and the coach had seen what had happened, and asked them if they had any goddamn room in the back for a damn coat. They took to the intercom to tell him, and everyone else on the plane, that sorry, they had no room for a coat in the back. So they went back and forth this way for several minutes, trying to figure out what to do with the damned coat, until finally my partner just hung it up in the first-class coat closet, while the woman did her best to ignore everything and everyone around her. She barely acknowledged his existence for the remainder of the flight. I do believe that he handed her the coat, ever so gracefully, and with a smile after they had landed. The best part? My partner had no idea who this woman was, but the other flight attendants did, which meant that the moment my partner got home, he asked me, "Who the hell is Martha Stewart?" When I found out why, I couldn't stop laughing for a very long time. I was 8 and naive enough to think that acting in movies was a merit-based career path, accompanying my showbiz parents to a cast and crew screening of The Mask of Zorro. Being young and precocious, I interrupted Catherine ZetaJones at the after-party and told her that I want to be an actress. She turned to me, looked me up and down, and said, "You're pretty enough, I suppose," then went back to her conversation. In retrospect, being considered pretty enough by one of the world's great beauties is a compliment, but at the time, I was just a child, and it was completely demoralizing. Hard work and talent aren't the means to a successful life. What does pretty enough mean anyways? In many ways, I think of that moment as the turning point when I went from feeling at ease in the world to constantly thinking about how everyone was judging me on my appearance. I used to be a Carey fan. Now I think that he is an absolute dick. I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio. After graduating college, I moved to the big city of Cleveland. This was around the height of popularity for the Drew Carey show. He did a great job portraying himself at this Midwest, wholesome, good guy rube. There were all these stories about him showing up in Cleveland bars and buying the entire place drinks, stuff like that. Everyone in that city loved him, or at least his image, and his TV show. About this time, he had booked a stint doing a stand-up routine in Vegas. The local radio stations were all over promoting the local Heroes Act. Part of all the promotion was giving a lucky caller round-trip airfare, hotel, and tickets to the Vegas show, complete with a meet and greet. I was the lucky caller. The entire trip was great, except for that meet and greet part. Someone should have told me the rules. I was unaware that introducing yourself to a celebrity at a meet and greet was a Fox Pass. Let me set the scene for you. An entire bar was rented out for his cast and crew, along with a couple of winners, like me. Nice place, very dark and trendy. I was in my early 20s, and oddly enough, a little nervous about meeting a celebrity, and more looking forward to hanging out after enjoying way too many free drinks and pretty girls. I brought a gift for Drew, because I'm from Ohio, and that's what we do. So I walk into the club with a custom-made glass paperweight that encapsulated a 24-karat gold Cleveland coin. And who's the front row that I see? You guessed it. Drew Carey was sitting at the first table. I don't know if I was starstruck or what, because I didn't notice his company, or anything else really, at first. So in mind, I thought, let's say hello, give him this gift, and get on with the party. I walked right up to Drew, introduced myself, told him that I had won the contest, loved his show, and presented him a gift, and then thanked him. That's when the stuff got weird. My introduction and the comments were literally less than 30 seconds, and I turned to walk away towards the bar. I began to hear and notice things as I turned. I noticed Drew was with what appeared to be 4 prostitutes. There are things on that table that I recognized from my fraternity house, and I hear some of the staff saying, "He didn't talk to Drew?" right behind me. His entire persona was bullcrap. I look back and see Drew throwing the paperweight and yelling to his muscle guys, "That one!" That was it. 3 minutes into my Vegas night of free drinks and trying to hook up with C-list celebrities, I was thrown out on my ass. He even had the people that talked to me thrown out for good measure. What a dickhead. It was years ago, but I still can't stand to see him on television. My dad was a curator in Edinburgh when I was growing up, and I was fortunate to meet a few celebrities who opened exhibitions for him. The absolute worst was Anthony Daniels, aka C-3PO from Star Wars. He opened up an exhibition called The Art of Star Wars, and was a rude, egotistical prima donna. When my father had tried introducing us to him, he flat out refused on the grounds that he was preparing for his performance, which was reading a short speech, and virtually shoved us out of the room. Later, once the scintillating and arduous performance was over, he declared it was time for the official photos, and clapped his hands at the guests like he was a school teacher, and we were rowdy pupils. He herded us into a place, and physically repositioned some people, quite literally pushing them around. We were all holding little exhibition guides that had his image on the cover, and he walked around adjusting each and every single one so that his face was visible. Only then could the photos proceed. What an utter asshole. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and now every time C-3PO is on the screen, all I can think of is this guy's a wanker. My father theorized that because Daniels is seldom recognized, that with the full-body robot costume, he acts like a complete prima donna to compensate it. I think that there's something in that. Funny enough, a few years earlier, my father had an exhibition on Star Trek that had opened by Mr. Scotty himself, James Doohan, as well as the lady who played Deanna Troi in The Next Generation. Mr. Doohan could not have been more polite, gracious, and kind. A really lovely man, a proper gentleman. He was funny, too. To put Mr. Daniels' behavior into perspective, my father has met and worked with a lot of famous people over the years. He says that without a doubt, that was the most difficult person and obnoxious person that he has ever had to deal with. The first movie that I ever saw Ron Pearlman in was Hellboy. I absolutely loved that movie and thought that Ron was the shit. One day, my parents and I were taking a vacation. We decided to spend the day at Santa Monica Pier in Los Angeles. What to our surprise, we were in one of the parking lots, getting ready to go to the pier, when my dad spies Mr. Pearlman standing right next to a car. My dad was also a huge fan of Ron, and decided that he would brave a confrontation to ask for a simple picture and maybe an autograph from him. As my dad had approached, Mr. Pearlman's face had screwed up into a powerful scowl, embalming my dad as he snaked past a few cars. My dad had approached Mr. Pearlman and asked him for his autograph. Ron simply lowered his shades to look at my dad right in the eye and said simply, "Fuck off." That was it. He then turned around and went back to doing whatever it was he was doing before my dad had approached. Now, I get that celebrities are often hassled, berated, and approached by fans all the time for photos and autographs and what have you. And this can get tiresome and irritating, I get it. But it's also kind of something you generally have to expect from being a celebrity. But that does not call for rudeness. A simple, "Hey, I'm sorry, not right now, I'm kind of busy," that would have sufficed. This guy was huge to me and my dad. We both had loved him for the roles that he played. We thought that he was a fantastic actor. Now I guess we know why most of his characters are jackasses, because he himself happens to be one. I had worked as a waiter at a Pacific Grill restaurant at the Four Seasons, Maui, between 1993 and 1996. At the time, the hotel was voted by Condé Nast magazine as #1 hotel in the world. We regularly had celebrities as guests. One of them was Sylvester Stallone. He was a real ass, much shorter and tinier in person than I had expected. His entire entourage was rude as well, very demanding, entitled asses. When I tried to take his order, one of his cronies had butted in and acted as if I had broke a rule by speaking directly to him. They made several unusual food requests and had the attitude of, "You know who we are, right?" I felt like they did their best to make sure that I felt like it was such an honor to serve him, and I was lucky to be demanded by him. Afterwards, I had heard a rumor after he had checked out that he left a turd in the shower of his hotel room. I was a fan of his movies and never viewed them the same way. I work in an arena, and I've seen a multitude of famous people, mostly sports stars and musicians. Worst was Prince, by a mile. He wouldn't speak to anyone that he considered under him, which was everyone except for his assistant. The limo driver for his concert was supposed to take him to his hotel after the show, since he had a day off after the show, and had another in the state show the day after. The driver had took Prince to his hotel after the show, with his 2 acquaintances, but wouldn't get out of the limo. Prince made a change in the itinerary where the driver was supposed to pick someone up from a city an hour away, and they should also have to be in the limo after the show, but he told no one. So Prince had made the one person in the limo dial his assistant because he didn't want to talk to the limo driver. The assistant passed on what needed to be done. Prince had went to the hotel, and the driver left to go pick up the other 2 people an hour away. Driver gets to the destination, and the people who he was made to pick up were currently at Prince's hotel, waiting in the lobby for when Prince was dropped off. The driver had to go 2 hours out of the way for nothing, because Prince doesn't talk to people, and the driver didn't get back until around 3 a.m. I used to live in the West Village in '08. One afternoon I went to the local Rite Aid during rush hour. I remember that I had a bunch of stuff that I picked up in my arms. As I grabbed a large 20-pack of batteries in one of the middle sections, I turned around to head towards the register. Some woman plows right into me. All of my stuff goes yard sailing across the floor, and I give a quick embarrassed, "Sorry, are you okay?" as I immediately reacted to kneel down to grab everything, even if it wasn't entirely my fault. As I'm on my knees fumbling between the toilet paper and the batteries, this woman is simply just staring at me. She didn't budge at all. She was also just standing there, not helping me at all. It was a bit awkward, looking up at her. And sure enough, it's Mandy Moore. And oh my hell, is she giving me the death look. Definitely not the same look that she is giving in A Walk to Remember. She just remained there. completely disgusted at me as she watched me pick it all up, making me feel like a low piece of shit. She eventually walks off, and I'm now in a long line at the register that, of course, has about 5 registers with one person working them, sort of taking it all in, slightly reeling about that bitch. That's when I start to hear someone behind me huffing and puffing in the back of the line. Sure enough, it's Mandy Moore. She was obviously in a traffic rush to be somewhere. Definitely somewhere not domestic, like a Rite Aid, where all the plebs exist. She does this, and the whole time, till I check out. As I leave, I look back at her, with a "see you later, cunt" smirk on my face. Made me get a little bit of dignity back, getting out of there before she even did. Heading home, I happened to live across the street from the Cowgirl restaurant, and next to it was this really good smoothie place at the time called Elixir or something like that. It was empty, and I'm all like, I need a smoothie. So to calm my temper down from that bitch's humiliation attempt, I decide to head over there. As I order, the door chimes to set off as it flies open. It's the motherfucking bitch, huffing and puffing through her nostrils, literally puffing down the back of my neck. I turned back around to the smoothie dispatch and gave my best idiot Midwestern "what you got on the menu today" questionnaire. I was asking the dumbest questions about their offerings, while thinking out loud my thought process, to which would be the best to my liking. The perfect stall tactic, in my opinion. She was absolutely furious, trying to argue with me to move aside. I just ordered, and didn't acknowledge that she existed, just like what she had done to me. She was so inflated, I don't even think that she even recognized me from 10 minutes ago in the Rite Aid. She kept trying to speak up to the register, trying to get them to take her order over mine, but I just raised my voice louder when she did. Made her sit through a couple of minutes listening to my conversation with myself. The best part was, the employees wouldn't even acknowledge her. I was the local there. They knew me very well. It was my turf. God, it felt good to do that to her. Finally got my blueberry banana with granola. Didn't even look at her when I had walked out. I went upstairs to my apartment. I've experienced and seen many crazy things during my time on Hudson Street, but that was one of the most bizarre things to happen in literally 20 minutes. Mandy, if this thing ever comes to you on the internet, do yourself a favor, because I'm going to leave you with this. Your self-absorbed celebrity past bullshit doesn't work. You're not even a has-been, just a once was. You're just a basic bitch, and I happen to be the local around here. So get your shit together, and stop acting like you're something special, because you're really not. A few years back, I worked as a cook in a hotel with an attached upscale pub. It was a popular spot for celebs to stay because of its proximity to both an indoor hockey arena, which would be repurposed for concerts, large stand-up shows, large local landmark that was often used for outdoor concerts. Rihanna was doing a tour with Akon at the time, and she chose to stay at our hotel instead of the one Akon was staying at. Rumor has it the reason was because she wanted to be the most important person at that hotel. A slow night close to closing time. She comes down to the pub for a meal. Her and 2 of her friends take up a booth, have the surrounding area blocked off so no one could bother them while they ate. In the empty restaurant, at least. Her bodyguard sits at the bar. Her first order comes in. Calamari. Pretty straightforward. We had a good calamari. I make up the plate. Add a regular garnish. A whoosh of sweet chili, mayo here. A few microgreens there. Nothing too overpowering, you know. Just the calamari resting on a small handful of greens. 2 sauces, and that's about it. Not even a minute after it leaves the kitchen, it gets sent back, saying that they wanted just calamari. None of that other stuff. I fry another portion, and I send it out. No complaints afterwards. Next they order mains. The 2 with her ordered stuff from the menu, but Rihanna had wanted something custom. Usually we don't do any special orders, but because her order was super easy, I was okay with doing it. She wanted noodles with Parmesan cheese and garlic. I put all 3 plates together, and I send them out. For Rihanna, I made capellini, which is angel hair pasta with garlic and Parmesan. Salt and pepper were the only other things that I added to it. Almost instantly, her pasta comes back. It's not good enough, was the only criticism, and I was asked to make it once again. I make almost the exact same thing, taste for quality, and I send it out once again. It comes back just as fast. The same problem. I'm kind of confused. I don't know how I could possibly make those 3 ingredients taste any different. So I risk making the same meal a 4th time. I send out a new plate, the exact same way. About time they got it right, she told the server. That same server had told me that she had never wanted to strangle someone so much in her entire life. I guess that she was equally hard on her as well. I finish off my shift. I shut down the kitchen, changing into my street clothes, and I sit at the bar. The 3 of them and the bodyguard happen to still be sitting there. I got to watch her treat her server like she was a child for another 20 minutes before they happened to leave, and they went into their room. Peter Wentz had dated a couple friends of mine, girls that he grew up with in the suburbs of Chicago, around about the time when Fall Boy's first album had first come out. The deal was that he got to screw each one of them whenever he wanted, and bring them on tour with Fall Out Boy one at a time. They were falling all over themselves to be the one he wanted at the moment, while still trying to remain friends. It was awkward all around, because one of them would show up with a new pair of expensive shoes that he had bought for her, and the other would grit her teeth and smile because all she had gotten was a quick fuck in the ass, and then been asked to spend the night curled around his drum set on the tour bus in the driveway, while he had filled his parents' hot tub with the local hot girls. I heard that he had a favorite thing to do with his brothers and bandmates, where they would invite all of these young girls over and pour beers onto their heads and say things like, "Fucking love it." And my 2 desperate concubine friends would laugh at how hard these younger girls were trying to hang out with Pete Wentz, who happens to be a rock god in our town. It went back and forth like that for a while before I realized that all of these people were just fucking assholes. I couldn't even look at any of them anymore. I was only actually around him once, when I went over to my friend's apartment to pick up some movies that I had loaned her. She had asked me to come up and chat with her friend for a minute, and I swear I was there for a good 10 minutes on her couch with her before I even realized that it was Peter Wentz. Shadow douchebag. He was reclined in a chair, back in a corner, hat pulled over his face, playing with his sidekick, rolling his stupid lip piercing around with his tongue. He didn't even say hello, or acknowledge that another person had walked into the room. So naturally I jumped a fucking mile when he muttered something out loud on his phone. Hi, I said, and he nodded to me without looking at me. I had gotten out of there so damn fast, because I knew my friend was just doing her best nonchalant, look at who's in my house right now, he's totally my boyfriend kind of look. So anyways, a couple of years later, I was sitting in the back of a bar in Chicago where a couple of stable adult friends had brought me for a low-key birthday drink, when some kind of secret door opens in the wall, and a bunch of men in black t-shirts push through. Pete walks in, dragging his really skinny, coked-out version of Ashley Simpson behind him, and behind her trailed both of Pete's cast-off fuck puppets, the 2 of them just kind of smiling dumbly and staring all bleary-eyed, like trained monkeys who were just happy that they still got a good food pellet at the end of the day. Ashley Simpson had stepped on foot on her way past, and then her security asked us to clear the area so these 4 high-priority human beings could have some privacy. I have to say, he was a total douchebag, and I definitely don't care for his music anymore. I was at Burke Williams Day Spa in Santa Monica in the late 90s. I had gone a bit early, so I could relax in the sauna before my massage appointment had started. I got my locker key, undressed, showered, and then I entered the sauna, which happened to be empty at the time. It's not a huge sauna, basically a long bench on one side, and then a smaller bench perpendicular to that, forming an L shape. A few minutes later, the door opens up, and a guy happens to come in, wearing a hand towel wrapped around his head. He had sat down on a smaller bench, and I immediately saw that it was Kevin Spacey. I was a fan of his, and hadn't heard anything about his sexual provocations at the time. I thought that it was kind of cool that he was there the same time that I was. Such an LA, New York type of thing. Oh look, Gina Davis is buying sunscreen at my Rite Aid kind of thing. But I wasn't going to intrude on his personal space by saying anything to him at all. With that, he felt the same obligation. After a few minutes, he starts rubbing his crotch through his towel. He wasn't blatant about it, but it was easy to tell what he was doing. After he got his pup tent up, he started stretching his legs. This meant that he accidentally rubbed against his leg a couple of times, then apologized. I waved it off the first time. Then Grimace smiled the next time, as I'd pretty much had enough of it. The third and final time, he decided to brush his leg against mine, and then just leave it there. I looked over at him. He had his eyes closed, but was rubbing his crotch once again. I got up, and I left at that point. I really wanted to lean over and tell him I thought that it was pretty stupid for an Oscar-winning actor to hang out in a sauna at a legit health spa, and then assume a wet hand towel wrapped around his head would give him the anonymity to make unwanted sexual advances on someone. So get it together, Spacey.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.